Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly devotional time. And we are still in intimate moments with our Savior. We've got probably another couple months in this book. And I just, again, hope that it's been blessing you just as much as it's been blessing me. Today, we are going to be going into an intimate moment with Zaccheus. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zaccheus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zaccheus, come down immediately. I must stay in your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to murmur, "He has gone to the house of a sinner." But Zaccheus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay back 4 times that amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come into this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost." And that's from Luke 19, verses 1 through 9. The meditation. Jericho, surrounded by palms, scented with balsam groves. Dates, palm honey, myrrh, and balsam form a continuous caravan of exports to the east. For the Roman government, the city is a lush center of taxation, plump, ripe, fragrant, with revenue. And knee-deep in the harvest are the tax collectors, making sure the proper due is rendered unto Caesar, and in the process, a denarius or 2 rendered unto themselves. It is early spring in Jericho, and a chill clings to the yawning shadows that stretch across the city. For many, the eastern sun is a freshly minted coin of opportunity. But commerce is far from the minds of the crowd that mingles with the morning's shadows. For this dawn brings with it something more than the promise of commerce. It brings the promise of a Messiah. Jesus has come to Jericho. The crowd swells. Eddies of anticipation swirl about and gather in strength. The squeeze of the multitude grows claustrophobic as the more curious elbow for position. But for one man, elbows aren't enough. He is Zaccheus, a short man. So short he can't see over the crowd. So short he has to climb a tree to catch a glimpse of the procession. Somehow, this short man has survived growing up in a tall world, growing up the object of stares, growing up the brunt of jokes, growing up the kid who got pushed around. In the jostled process of growing up, a part of his childhood was trodden underfoot, and that tender spot of him in him died, crushed under the calloused and often cruel feet of the tall. And yet he carries that stepped-on part of himself everywhere he goes, even up the stout trunk of that sycamore tree. But somewhere along the way to adulthood, Zaccheus learned to compensate. First, to laugh at the jokes, and later to fight back. And so, as he climbed the professional ladder, he stepped on anyone who stood in his way, anyone on the next rung up. He would show them all. Someday they'd look up to him. At last, he made it to the top. Chief tax collector, king of the hill, controlling commerce. King of the hill, greasing his greedy little palms with the sweat of the businessman's brow. King of the hill, looking down at Jericho. But the hill he rules is a dunghill, at least in the eyes of the people. For tax gatherers are despised as ruthless bill collectors for a corrupt government. Even the Talmud looks down on them, allowing a Jew the sanction of lying to a murderer, to a thief, and to a tax collector. True, Zaccheus has power, and he has wealth, but the stature he sought among others has eluded him, and so his friendship. But Zaccheus has heard stories about this Jesus, who was a friend to tax collectors, who ate and drank with them and stayed in their homes, who changed the life of Levi, the tax collector at Capernaum, for whom Levi left a lucrative career, left everything, and not for higher wages, but for no wages at all. This Jesus must be some man. There's even talk about his being the Messiah. The thought captivates Zaccheus, a Messiah who is a friend of tax collectors. And with a schoolboy's eagerness, he shinnies up the sycamore to see him. Zaccheus crawls out on a limb for a better look. He marvels at the lack of pomp and circumstance surrounding Jesus. Nothing like a king, and yet something about him is so regal. People are draped over windowsills like laundry hanging out to dry, watching. A thick fringe lines the rooftops and looks down. On the streets are huddles of curiosity, holy men and housewives, teachers and transients, businessmen and bakers, elbow to elbow. Suddenly, Jesus stops. He looks up at Zaccheus. Shafts of the Savior's love filter through the branches. A long-awaited dawn shines on a despised tax collector, and a strange warmth begins to stir the cold darkness of his soul. All eyes follow Jesus as he parts the sea of spectators on his way to that sycamore. Zaccheus feels the darkness of his soul shrinking back. For years he has rendered unto Caesar. Now he must render unto Christ an account of himself. And his soul knows that the account isn't good. The ledger is filled with the entries of money extorted, money under the table, money skimmed off the top. Money, money, money. That's the bottom line for Zaccheus, the bottom line of a bankrupt heart. But the Savior isn't looking for an audit. He is looking for something else. He searches Zaccheus's eyes to find that stepped on part of his life. And on it, he sees every footprint, every heel mark. Jesus is moved with compassion for that little boy who had to grow up in a big man's world. Zaccheus, he calls him by name and asks for a place to stay. Zaccheus looks into the eyes that search the far reaches of his soul. They are the eyes of both a king and a friend. Ripples of contempt work their way through the crowd. Going to stay? Where? His house? Eating with a sinner? But the whispered innuendos can't intrude on this intimate moment. And in the same way you would welcome a friend you have yearned to see for a long, long time, Zaccheus jumps down and welcomes Jesus into his home. From behind the barriers he has erected around his heart, a flood of repentant feelings bursts forth, feelings that had been dammed up for years. Zaccheus goes out on still another limb. What took a lifetime to accomplish, one sentence of devotion liquidates, and not by a token 10%, half to the poor, fourfold to the defrauded. Look closely. Witness the miracle, a camel passing through the eye of a needle. Another dawn centuries earlier, the walls of Jericho came tumbling down at the shout of Joshua's men. Today, another wall comes tumbling down in Jericho, this time at the offer of a king's friendship, this time the wall of a rich man's heart. And amid the rubble, that crushed, stepped upon part of Zaccheus's life, and his heart springs to life. And the prayer, Dear Jesus, forgive me for trying so long to compensate for my stunted growth. I have expected my work and my wealth to increase my stature. Help me to see, Lord, that an increase in my stature can only come as a result of a decrease in myself. It is in losing my life that I find it. It is in dying that I live. It is in giving that I receive. I confess to you that I am short in spiritual stature. To even see you, it seems that I am always needing something to stand on. but I want her or an evangelist. I have heard so much about you. How much is opinion? How much is hearsay? How much is truth? I want to know for myself. I want to hear with my own ears, not simply from a book or a television or radio or a tape. I'm tired of secondhand experience. I want to feel with my own heart. If I have to climb a tree awkwardly and undignified to do so, I will gladly do it. Please come near me, Lord. I'll be out on a limb waiting. And as you come, overwhelm me with the awesome wonder that it is not I who seek you in the streets nearby, as much as it is you who seek me in the sycamores. And again, I invite you to continue a prayer to the Lord as he meets you in this intimate moment. I'll see you next week.